Well, this is the lecture for creating the OCT, and many of you wonder what it takes to actually, what it takes to make a good OCT. Well, based off of my personal experience, I'm going to give you some tips that I think are very important to making a successful original character tournament. Let's begin. To start off, you absolutely need to make a concept that's both eye-catching and original so that a large audience can be attracted to what you have to show. So, what would be so different about your contest that'll prevent other people from flocking to other people's OCTs? And what would keep people engaged? To make an OCT, you need to have something original to bring people in. So, in the very beginning stages of an OCT, that's very important. And one of the very first OCTs that I came across is End Zone. When it came out in the Stone Ages, because it was an original concept at the time. About 600 plus contestants. I'm not entirely certain about the truthfulness of my numbers here, but 600 plus contestants actually tried out for this OCT. It was a really cool original concept at the time, and that's what dragged people in. So, what you need to do is you need to come up with an idea for a contest that will attract people, even if it's a concept that's been done before. Since, like movies and video games, everything's been done story-wise, what you need to do is to take a pre-existing idea, if you can't think of something entirely original, and make it your own. Even some entirely original things are crappy, like Plan 9 from Outer Space, the movie. Just take a pre-existing idea and make it your own, so that it'll stand out in the crowd and people actually come to it. You know what I mean? Another thing to take into consideration OCT-wise is something very important for the entire contest and not just the very beginning, and that is the story and the characters. The story and the characters of any given OCT has to be good to get people involved. In my opinion, it should not be something incredibly complex. You shouldn't make your OCT story something like Shakespeare. It'll confuse people. Something to take into consideration, the story of any given OCT doesn't have to be epic and complex, and it really shouldn't be the main focus of your tournament. Your story just has to be involving enough that will attract the contestants initially, and have them keep fighting throughout the rounds to get to the final round. I have some personal experience that can actually help me back this up, too. I ran the very first Nightmare tournament, you see, and I didn't want to make the story epic and complex for the very reason that I wanted to have the contestants make their own stories. Just have your story there to sort of act as a backbone so that your contestants can build their stories onto that backbone and make something their own. Right. For your OCT, in addition to having a good backbone story for contestants to build on, you also need to have a good protagonist and antagonist to make the contestants care. From more personal experience, for example, I've seen plenty of bad guys in OCTs that are just whimsical, that appear to be whimsical, have the canes, have the top hats, are bright and colorful, hee hee hee, happy-go-lucky, but then they turn out to be absolute monsters. I've seen many of those types of characters around DeviantArt's original character tournaments, and it's just gotten redundant. You just need to make your protagonist and antagonist in your tournaments engaging, so that contestants will want to help them or fight them. What you need to do is to have the protagonist and antagonist have a great personality and be somebody that the contestants will care about. Overall, my point is, you just need to allow contestants to take the story in whatever direction they want. So you just need to provide a good backbone story. I just want to emphasize one final thing there. If you don't want to follow that, and you just want to have your contestants strictly adhere to a brick wall of a story that you made, with no creative input whatsoever from the contestants, why bother running a tournament? Next on, we're moving on to the technical bits of a tournament. Aside from the story and aside from the characters, what should you look for in making a good OCT? Well, from a technical standpoint, there are several things. For example, how many contestants do you ultimately want, and how many do you think you can get, and how are you going to put them into brackets? The first Nightmare tournament I had 64 contestants join in total. And so I made 8 areas to split these 64 contestants into. That worked out fine. But I ran into a bit of a roadblock with Nightmare Tournament 2 because I was expecting the same turnout, so I made 8 areas again, but I only got 32 people this time. Right, thank you. You need to make brackets with flexibility so that you won't have to worry about, having an awkward bracket thanks to more or less contestants than you expected. Other technical standpoints that you need to consider in your tournament are things like contacting your contestants via notes, setting out some clear rules that people can follow, just explain everything, what you want on your ref sheets, what you want or don't want people to do, how long the auditions have to be, or what you want in the auditions, and just more specific things that you want to lay out in your tournament, And for rules, you need to explain everything. Don't ever assume that people will just automatically get what you're trying to say. Just spell everything out in your rules so that people will understand them right off the bat. But if people note you with questions concerning the rules, don't worry about it. Contact them and just reiterate what you may have already put in the rule journal, or just calmly explain it to them. Is no problem. Questions mean that contestants are interested, so don't ever treat a contestant's question as if it's a stupid question. There are no stupid questions in a tournament. And you should also make timely updates to the tournament page. This means like the number of days left until the round's over. This means submitting the entries into their own, folders in your group, etc., etc. But the most important thing about an OCT technically is getting your judgments in on time. If a judge is always late in handing out judgments, it may irritate competitors. So work out a system where you can always get judgments in on time. I actually ran into this roadblock with Nightmare Tournament 2 because we always had a problem with getting all of the judgments in on time prior to round 4. We always had some judges, being up to a week late on getting judgments in. You never, ever want to be that late in getting a judgment in, or it will piss the contestants off. Work out a system where you can get together with your judges at some point shortly after the round ends, so you can just get all the judgments there and then, and have them posted in a blog shortly after that. Oh, and something that I don't actually have in my notes that I want to bring up to the judges, okay? When you make your judgments, you need to be thorough with what you write. Don't just have little bullet points briefly explaining what contestants did right or wrong. They don't like that. You need to have a good write-up for your judgments, or else contestants won't fully understand what they did wrong, and they're going to look at you as if you're a moron. In addition to doing that in an OCT, you actually need to have good judges. What I would recommend is to find a staff of reliable people who can get judgments in on time and who aren't biased, alright? So what I would recommend doing is bringing in people you know are experienced with judging for OCTs and who have a reliable history as judges. Don't just take any random suggestions as to who can judge for OCTs, because sometimes that can lead to disaster. I had a judge in Nightmare Tournament 1 who was undeniably biased, okay, and who fought the staff all the way to make absolutely sure that 2 contestants made it to the very end of the tournament, which ultimately took the fun out of the OCT for some contestants, especially those 2. And this goes for OCT runners too. Don't be biased. It's not cool.